Hi everyone, I'm Calluna, and yay! The official Season 7 trailer for Game of Thrones came out! You know what that means, it's time for another analysis and breakdown. I had a feeling that this trailer wasn't going to show us anything really new considering the shorter number of episodes this season, and for the most part, yeah, the trailer wasn't giving us too much we didn't already know or could infer from the end of Season 6. Well, with that, let's get started. As always, be warned, this is spoiler territory for anyone not caught up with the current season. We begin in King's Landing with a backlit shot of Cersei in a courtyard. Her voiceover tells us that there are enemies from every side. The East. This cuts to a shot of Grey Worm leading the Unsullied army, sporting some fancy new black armor with Dany's triple dragon sigil. Looks like they are putting the Tyrell and Martell alliance to work by giving everyone nice new clothes. Next, she says that the enemies are to the west. This cuts to a shot of the carved map table we'll be seeing later in the trailer. It specifically shows two locations, Duskendale and Rosby, both of which are towns just northeast of King's Landing. We haven't been to either of these locations in the show yet, but given their proximity to King's Landing, we will probably be seeing a battle there, or those will be areas where Dany might be setting up camp for her armies. Before we move on to another direction spoken by Cersei, we see a shot of a ship, though it's extremely dark and hard to get a lot of the details. My first guess would be that it is Dany's ship, since the side tails are designed to look like dragon wings, and it might be a dragon figurehead here at the front of the ship, like we saw at the end of Season 6. However, it might also be ships navigated by Euron Greyjoy, since he planned to woo Dany, and making his ship look dragon-like sounds like something he would try to do. It's difficult at this time to really make out which ships these are. We cut back again to the map table, this time showing us the Vale, which shouldn't be that much of a surprise considering they saved the day at Winterfell. As we are on the map, Cersei then says enemies to the south, and we cut to someone cleaning a blade in the dark. It's a quick shot and it's really dark, so it's kind of difficult to tell exactly what kind of weapon it is, but based on the direction Cersei mentions, south could very easily refer to Dorne. So my first guess would be that it is someone cleaning a spear, probably Obara since that is her weapon of choice. I also hope so because then that means the Sand Snakes might actually get to do something this season. And we're back to another map shot with us seeing the Wall, specifically Castle Black, Eastwatch by the Sea, and Last Hearth. These are all important spots tactically, and we've heard Eastwatch and Last Hearth be mentioned a couple times before. Last Hearth is the stronghold of the Umbers, the ones who delivered Rickon to Ramsay and betrayed the Starks, so maybe we're gonna see some kind of fallout for the remaining Umber forces? Eastwatch is the other strong Night's Watch location, and given the coming war with the Army of the Dead, it makes sense for some forces to be stationed there. As we are panning on this, Cersei finishes with enemies to the north, which immediately cuts to Arya in the woods, on horseback, dressed in warmer clothes. Judging on the foliage, it looks like autumn, and you can see that there is a little bit of frost on the ground, suggesting winter is starting to move further south, given her last known location was at the Twins. I expect she will be heading up to Winterfell to rejoin her family, though it is possible she could be heading to King's Landing to cross off the rest of the names on her list. More on her in a bit. Our next shot is Cersei standing in the courtyard, but we see that the floor has been recently painted with a new map of Westeros. At least I'm guessing it's new based on how bright the colors are and the fact that there's a ladder and some buckets of paint. It's interesting to see where Cersei is standing on the map, right at the middle area where the North's territory begins. It seems like she might be focusing a good deal of attention there then, especially if news of Walder Frey's death reaches her. Finally, we cut to a normal shot of Cersei saying, "Whatever stands in our way, we will defeat it." My guess is she's having this discussion with either Jaime or Qyburn. Those are the only two who I think she would trust enough to have this conversation with. She isn't adorned in any jewelry either, which means she's in a slightly more comfortable state, less showy than she would be if she was holding court. Cut to a shot of the Lannister army looking fucking boss with their bright red shields and armor. They are always very showy. Then we see Cersei sitting at court, and there are a lot of great details here. For one, the Iron Throne no longer has the 7-pointed star behind it to represent the Faith of the Seven. Instead, there's a Lannister sigil. The star was there at the end of Season 6, so Cersei has been giving the whole place a nice redecorating. You'll also notice that the cloaks on the soldiers are red. The Queen's Guard last season still had the white cloaks, so either these are Lannister soldiers, or even more redecorating has been done by giving the King's Guard new red cloaks. And of course, Cersei is with her three strongest allies, Qyburn, who is now her Hand of the Queen, Robert Strong, her champion, and of course, Jaime. Jaime isn't looking too comfortable right now, though given the situation he's found himself in, he can't be too happy. Cersei has done the very thing he had tried to stop Aerys from doing, and that decision has followed him ever since. Cersei's voiceover starts with, "We're the last Lannisters," then cuts to a shot of Cersei on the throne. Oh man, I love the detailing on her dress. It looks amazing. Cersei looks particularly displeased here, and given the context of the conversation, perhaps it is her finding out that Tyrion is coming back, or that he's aiding Daenerys. Speaking of which, we cut to him on a cliff, as Cersei finishes her voiceover with, "The last ones who count." We get another view of Tyrion taking in the view from the cliffs, and back out to see a building in the distance. This is Dragonstone. We can tell from some of the upcoming shots later in the trailer. The dragons are flying around, having a great old time. We cut to Dany as a door opens to reveal Dragonstone and its twisted walkway. It's kind of supposed to look like the spine of a dragon. We already knew that Dany would be making her way here thanks to the long walk promo, but it is cool to get this nice outside shot of the castle. We've been at the castle before, but haven't seen too much of the exterior, which is unfortunate since it has a lot of really cool architecture described in the books. We hear Dany's voiceover tell us, "I was born to rule the Seven Kingdoms," which is rather appropriate for this scene since this is where she was born. We see her with Grey Worm, of course, but on the other side we can just barely get a glimpse of some familiar-looking robes. Looks like Varys will be treating with Dany as well, which is cool because up until now they haven't shared any scenes together. I'm looking forward to seeing how Dany feels about Varys, considering his past involvement with Robert Baratheon. We get some more nice shots of Dany at the shore, so presumably this is her first reaction to arriving in Westeros. Next is Dany on the throne at Dragonstone. This isn't as impactful since we've already seen it at the Long Walk promo, but it's still cool nonetheless. What is cool is the cut to her army running into a place which has the Lannister sigil and a fancy L on the archway. And based on the slightly different color and look to the palace, this suggests that Dany's army is attacking Casterly Rock, the main castle of House Lannister, which is very interesting considering where Casterly Rock is in comparison to King's Landing or Dragonstone. Both of those are on the eastern shore, while Casterly Rock is on the western shore. It makes sense for Dany to take this place eventually, since most of the other locations in this area, south of the Neck anyway, are making allegiances to her claim. Dorne and the Reach support her, the Stormlands are being invaded by her fleet anyway, and the Iron Islands, close in proximity to Casterly Rock, will need to be retaken anyway. The fact that we are seeing her army both here and at Dragonstone shows that Dany will be having several different factions. It's just a matter of figuring out how they will be attacking. If by sea, then Yara and Theon will probably lead a portion of the fleet. If by land, then the Dothraki will ride through the Stormlands and the Westerlands. Not sure which she will take, considering we see both forces later on in the trailer. We hear shouts of King in the North as we are now back in Winterfell. We see Jon and Sansa, of course, and hey look, Brienne made it back okay! This is sort of a closer shot, so we can't tell if anyone else came back with her in Pod, or hell, if Pod made it back okay. He's probably fine, though. There was a lot of potential for meetup in the Riverlands and the Vale, with Brienne, Podrick, the Hound, and the Brotherhood, and possibly Arya heading up north, and Melisandre heading south. We then cut to another shot in the meeting room, though presumably it's a little earlier in the timeline since we don't see Brienne anywhere. Again, lots of details in this shot. We see Jon with the two people he trusts at his side, Davos and Sansa. Around the room we can spot various important people like Littlefinger, Tormund, Lyanna Mormont, and Lord Royce, so at least I think that's him. I don't immediately spot Sweet Robin, so it's possible he remained behind in the Vale while Royce led the forces for him. There's one other person who drew my eye. This lady here with the long hair. She looks to be a noblewoman. I'm curious to see if we're going to see more of the Northern Lords and Ladies arriving at Winterfell to pledge their loyalty to the Starks. We hear voiceover of Littlefinger talking to Sansa, saying, "Your father and brothers are gone, yet here you stand," cutting to him with her on the balcony overlooking the courtyard, which we've seen some stills of already. It's interesting he mentions her family to her, since Sansa should be aware that Bran might be alive somewhere thanks to Theon. He's still trying to tempt Sansa to take power over Jon as the true heir to Winterfell. Hopefully she'll just ignore him. We see one of the gates of the wall opening, which will come into play later in the trailer. Presumably this is at Castle Black. We then cut to Theon on a burning ship, which again we will see more context of later on in the trailer. As this is going on, we hear Littlefinger finish his voiceover with, "The last best hope against the coming storm." And we are now seeing Melisandre standing at a cliff, and we find out where she is in the next shot. We see her at the top of Dragonstone, with Dany and her small party from before making their way up the steps. You can tell it's Dragonstone based on the same curvy path we saw from Dany's perspective earlier. Looks like Melisandre really did make it pretty far south, considering she left from Winterfell. After Jon Snow forced her to leave, now Melisandre will be meeting one other person who could fit the Azor Ahai prophecy. Word must have gotten to Melisandre by now of the various red priests and priestesses in Meereen who have been supporting Dany. Looks like she will be looking into her too. Seems like Melisandre might be the key to uniting Dany and Jon's forces. 3 dragons could certainly come in handy in the War for the Dawn. At the very least, Mel will be filling Dany in on the war to the north and its priority over the Iron Throne. Perhaps Dany will be reminded of her vision of the throne from the House of the Undying. It did look like it was either covered in ashes or snow. Next, we see a group of figures in what looks like an area beyond the wall. Perhaps this is the party that passed through the gate. They are running from something, most likely wights or White Walkers. The shot moves too quickly to get much else, unfortunately. Another shot of Arya in the woods, though this time there is considerably more snow on the ground, so that would insinuate that she's heading north. Considering the road that Arya would probably take up north, it's possible that we could have a reunion between her and Nymeria, who, besides Ghost, is the only other direwolf we know to be alive. I have a feeling Arya might get outnumbered and then Nymeria comes to her rescue. In the books, we know Nymeria has a pack and is attacking various enemy soldiers who come after her, so it's certainly a possibility. Plus, it would really help to signify Arya's return to her true identity as a Stark. We cut back to presumably that same group of people beyond the wall. They're making a defensive circle and they have their weapons out. From the color of some of the blades, it looks like they might be carrying dragonglass swords and Valyrian blades, which we know are effective against White Walkers. The intense wind around them suggests that some are nearby, and I'm curious to see what reason this group had for venturing beyond the wall. Was it to rescue people? Find another stash of dragonglass? Or perhaps Jon is trying to find Bran? We hear a voiceover of Davos telling us that we need to put aside our enmities and bind together, just as we get a creepy image of Littlefinger in the dark, suggesting he's still trying to cause a rift between Jon and Sansa. We then see shots of the Dothraki army in mid-battle, which we'll see more of later. We see a fight taking place on a ship with fire everywhere, which is probably where that earlier shot of Theon was taking place. It's a really chaotic scene, so it's difficult to tell who's fighting who here, but my first guess would be that Yara and Theon's fleet are being attacked by Euron, since that would make the most sense for who could fight well at sea. Last we heard from Euron, he was having his men build ships to replace the ones stolen by Yara and Theon, so it makes sense that he would then target them. Davos has his game face on, as he says it won't matter in the end who stands on the Iron Throne, just as we see a new shot of Dany and Tyrion looking over the carved table map at Dragonstone that we previously saw Stannis looking at in Season 2. This table was commissioned by Aegon the Conqueror, so it holds a lot of significance to Dany, who is looking to basically do what her ancestor did by uniting the Seven Kingdoms again. Robert Strong is sporting some new armor, which has decorations that match Cersei's new threads. Nice to see it's not just Dany's people getting new outfits this season. And now, the most perplexing shot of the trailer. I am not really sure what's going on in this sequence due to how quick and dark it is. I think this is a chandelier, and it looks a bit like the one we saw in the center of the Citadel. So if that's where we are, then the figures running through the bookshelves are probably Sam and some of the other maesters in training. The man in the back might be Marwyn, a maester who studies magic in the books who we think is cast this season. Or maybe this is Jorah. We know that Dany commanded him to find the cure to his grayscale, so perhaps he sought out the world's most extensive library and scholars to do so. I have further evidence Jorah will be showing up, even if this doesn't turn out to be him. And now, my favorite shot! Jon pushing Littlefinger up against the wall in the crypts. We see that once again we are at Lyanna Stark's grave, which is super important considering the two men here. We know that Littlefinger suspected Lyanna had loved Rhaegar and wasn't kidnapped, from his conversation with Sansa in the crypts in Season 5. Littlefinger is very clever and shrewd. He probably figured out that Ned Stark would never sleep with someone else if he was married to Catelyn, so he might have put 2 and 2 together with Jon Snow's true parentage. Maybe he's confronting him about it? I'm not sure what Littlefinger gains from telling Jon this, though. More chaos between him and Sansa, probably? I doubt they would have them both be here and not have a significant conversation, though, and with Jon's aggressive behavior, maybe he's just tired of Littlefinger trying to manipulate Sansa. Back to more battle sequences! We see more shots of the Unsullied fighting the Lannister army, presumably still at Casterly Rock. They do so love to have their house banners on display. We quickly see Arya looking under what looks like a bed of some sort. Not sure exactly where she is. If she's back at Winterfell, maybe she's in her room looking for something she could have hidden. There's not a ton of detail here, so it's difficult to say where she is. Next, there is a shot of a person whose hand has a lot of grayscale across it. This is why I'm pretty sure that Jorah will be making a return of some kind. Since we aren't getting much in the shot just besides his hand, who knows where the hell he could be. But hey, he's probably coming back. Hopefully. We see more of the Dothraki army fighting again, but now this time we get clear shots of who they're fighting. The Lannister army. So we know then that both the Dothraki and the Unsullied armies are fighting Lannister forces, presumably at the same location of Casterly Rock again? The Dothraki are far more comfortable on a field and traveling by horse, so perhaps Dany will have the Unsullied arrive by ship, and the Dothraki cross the Stormlands and Westerlands to try and surround Casterly Rock. Quick cut to Tormund and Jon Snow running in what looks like that same area beyond the wall we saw earlier in the trailer, so maybe they're part of that group running back. A quick glance at Tormund would suggest he's carrying a dragonglass sword, which I mentioned earlier. Quick cut to Grey Worm and Missandei both removing their clothes, which suggests sexy times, which will prove interesting considering Grey Worm being a eunuch. My guess is this will be some kind of confession of love from Missandei, him saying, "I'm not good enough for you because I can't get it up," and her being like, "I love you anyway." These two are really cute together, so I expect something kinda mushy like that from them. Quick cut to other sexy times, with Yara kissing another lady. At first I thought it was Oberyn, but with those very distinctive pointy shoulders, it looks like Ilaria. Oh boy, I really hope she's not poisoning Yara like she did with Myrcella. Not sure what that might lead to, but in fighting amongst the various factions supporting Daenerys is something I would expect to happen. I really hope that's not the way that Yara dies. That would be super lame. Another quick cut to Dany knocking over the lion piece on her map. Pretty obvious metaphor here. Next we have two bodies falling into the water, which looks like this is probably from that fire ship battle. It moves too quickly to tell exactly who they could be. We then get this cool shot of the Dothraki army in that field again, with Drogon flying overhead. Perhaps Dany will take some more lessons from Aegon after seeing his map at Dragonstone? There is a particularly famous battle where Aegon utilized his dragons to set the field aflame to severely cripple his enemies, one of which was the Lannister army. So maybe we're going to see some form of the Field of Fire battle here. We're really getting a sense of history repeating itself this time around. Dany's conquering being similar to Aegon I, Cersei taking power and becoming consumed by madness like Ares, and Jon leading the armies of the North in preparation for the Second Battle of the Dawn. We conclude with a black screen and Jon Snow's voiceover. The Great War is here. I expect the majority of Season 7 will focus on the armies unifying against Cersei, while Jon and the other northern allies are prepping for the battle against the White Walkers. I doubt that Cersei will work together with anyone, no matter the circumstances, so I expect her to be the main antagonist Dany will be fighting against, then later maybe to shifting to allying with Jon to stop the White Walkers. With only 13 episodes remaining, anything is possible. Alright, so that's my breakdown for the Season 7 trailer. There were quite a number of characters who we didn't see any indication of where they could be, like Edmure, Olenna, Euron, the Hound and the Brotherhood Without Banners, Benjen, the Night's Watch, or Bran and Mira. It looks like we'll be focusing on Westeros completely now, since the majority of the Essos characters are now at Dragonstone. I wonder if we're going to see what's left of Meereen after Dany left it. Naturally, this trailer left us with far too many questions and not enough answers. Is Arya heading back to Winterfell? How will Dany begin her conquering of the Seven Kingdoms? What does Cersei plan to do now that she has so many enemies coming for her? What is Melisandre's intention for Dany? Will Sansa and Jon work together, or is Littlefinger's scheming going to work? And how will Jon learn about his true parentage? So, what did you guys think of this trailer? What points do you agree with me on or disagree on? What did you notice in the trailer that I didn't mention here? Post your comments and questions below. I'm curious to see if you came up with any other interpretations of some of the trickier images we saw in the trailer. Also, were there any questions that you had? Was something confusing, or you want me to go into more detail about why I think something might happen? Feel free to post questions below. If I get enough of them, I'll do a bonus Q&A video based on what you guys asked. Well, Less than 2 months to go before more Game of Thrones videos. I better get back to finishing my Not Dead Yet video series then. I'm Calluna, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya! Everyone, just wanted to let you know I have a Patreon page. If you're not familiar with Patreon by now, it's a website that allows you to donate a small amount each month to your favorite content creators. You'll get a bunch of different rewards depending on the amount that you donate. Feel free to check out my page to see what kind of rewards that you can get by helping to donate. Every little bit helps, and helps to make this show even better, so wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. Thanks.
Geek Vision.